I'm assuming most people are probably familiar with that infamous clip of Tim Pool debating Sam Seder. The clip has resurfaced recently, so you probably have seen it. If not, just search up Tim Pool vs. Sam Seder and it won't be too hard to find. In the clip, Tim Pool characterizes deontology and utilitarianism, two very complex ethical philosophical systems, in perhaps the dumbest way imaginable. The clip is short, but Tim Pool's mistakes here are virtually endless. Perhaps the most remarkable part that I want to address here is the idea that movie villains such as Thanos are utilitarians, while heroes such as Captain America are apparently deontological. This is a complete misunderstanding of these systems and a display of ignorance on Tim's behalf. I am not philosophically educated, and I do not claim to be, but even I can see this. Obviously, the first issue with the argument is that it is stupid to make arguments based upon who the baddies in a film are. It is a pretty dumb way of making a point. But to get to the actual point Tim was trying to make, the first and primary issue is that Tim's take is incredibly reductive. It is the kind of reductive thinking that can only be expected from someone who once overheard the terms and then half imagined what the definitions were. First, we will get into what utilitarianism and deontology actually are. Utilitarianism is a consequentialist ethical philosophy, and it's a system that assesses the morality of an act based on its ability to maximize well-being and or minimize harm. Deontology, meanwhile, argues for strong and specific moral rules defining what act is wrong and what is right, that do not really vary with situation. Of course, it is a lot more complex than that, but these are your basic definitions of what these systems are. The main issue with Tim Pool's analysis is that it is highly reductive. The most obvious part is that it does not take into account different forms of utilitarianism. The most important distinction is between act and role utilitarianism. Act utilitarianism assesses individual acts and their consequences on the greater good. Role utilitarianism tries to establish moral rules designed to lead to the best consequences, minimizing harm or maximizing pleasure. The establishment of these basic rules makes the moral system stronger, more efficient, and more practical than act utilitarianism is. So how does this link to Tim Pool's analogy? Pool claimed that Thanos was utilitarian and Captain America deontological. In reality, because philosophy is complicated, both could easily have been utilitarians. Thanos could be an act utilitarian, who believes that genociding half a population leads to more well-being and is therefore just. Captain America could be a role utilitarian, who believes that there is an ethical role against genocide in any case, because this role utilitarian order is stronger and more practical in its support of the greater good. This is just one example of a hole in Tim Pool's analogy. He claims one is deontology and one is utilitarian, as if this is some simple two-sided game, like the game of left versus right that he spends most of his time playing. Some subjects are far more complicated than that, and Tim Pool should probably not talk about these things. You cannot just assert that villains are utilitarian, as Pool did. The idea that most villains are acting based on an ethical system that advocates the creation of strong ethical rules designed to serve the greater good consequentially is ridiculous. You cannot just conflate act and rule utilitarianism, and God knows what else. In reality, rule utilitarianism could easily be understood as the philosophical worldview backing up the good guys. This is just a small thing, but I still believe it is very bad and an inaccurate representation of complex and serious ideas. Pool has countless listeners, and they now have no clue what utilitarianism is, and believe in some deranged, reductive philosophical ethics where utilitarian bad guy and deontology good guy. It is very reductive, and of course it is. Tim Pool should never have brought up these philosophical terms in a debate. It was a terrible idea. What could we expect but reductive arguments when they are literally based around random pop culture stuff? We did, however, learn one thing from this particular moment. Tim Pool knows nothing about philosophy.